So today we're going to take a look at Scott Galloway, a marketing professor at NYU who has lately been emerging as a wealth commentator that talks a lot about wealth, economic inequality, crisis of masculinity, tech, AI, and he kind of puts all of it together to explain the current state of society. So I don't follow him, but I stumbled across his content a few times and thought he had some interesting ideas and perspectives that I can expand on and provide more detailed analysis around it. So let's dive in.
Yeah. So Scott, let's get into your book. But first, run through, if you will. I've seen you talk about this in speeches. Talk about how the system is rigged. So if you got $1 million, great. If you got 5 million, 10 million, even better. Life gets easier because the way our tax system's set up.
Yeah, we have a very progressive tax system until you get to about the 99th percent. And essentially the people who get most damaged by our current tax code, it's lower and middle income households, their taxes have gone up slightly because of consumption, but not because of federal. The people that really get hurt are what I call the workhorses, and that are people who make an exceptionally good living, but it's all current income, and they live in a blue state. They might be paying 50 to 54% tax rate. I bet some of those people are on around this table right now. But if you can make the jump to light speed and invest in assets, stocks, housing, then your tax rate plummets. So in America, we've decided to try and create a super class of billionaires, and then if they win the gold medal, we're going to give them the silver and the bronze. Two biggest tax deductions, capital gains and mortgage interest. Who owns homes and stocks? People my age. Who doesn't know? Who rents and makes their money from current income? Young people. So we've decided that the wealthiest people in the world should get exceptionally more wealthy. Minimum wage stuck at $9.25. Stock market is screamed up. The average 70-year-old is 72% wealthier than they were 40 years ago. The average person under the age of 40 is 24% less wealthy. We are purposely transferring more wealth from the poor and middle class to the upper class to the super rich, and from young to old.
Now, he's totally right here. He's talking about main tax advantages that are available to people, and the reality is that wage or a salary is the least tax efficient way to make money. And there are only very few ways around it, so it's hard to escape that high taxation, as he mentioned in the clip. And then he talks about how assets like stocks, bonds, real estate are way more tax efficient way to make money. And guess who doesn't have it? Well, young folks, right? So his whole point is that if you have money, you can buy assets. And if you have assets, you get to enjoy these tax breaks and make even more money. So he is kind of setting the stage for the income disparity argument, as well as demographics argument. And by the way, demographics is something people usually dismiss. Everyone wants to talk about income inequality, even though demographics oftentimes have far wider and deeper implications. Shifts in demographics have huge impact on things like Social Security, Medicare, housing, labor force participation. It also affects economic growth rates, crime pattern. We're already seeing how changes in demographics also affect cultural norms and even voting behavior. A great example is New York City, by the way. If you look at the data, you can see that New York City's top voting issues were general affordability, housing, and crime. So it's not like people are complaining because their neighbors are richer or whatnot, but it is as simple as, hey, 60% of my paycheck is going towards rent. I cannot afford to survive any health emergency, and I do not feel safe walking my dog at night. You know what I mean? So a lot of these issues are policy driven. So Scott is spot on to call out the lawmakers to address these structural issues that exist in our society.
You say in the book, which is true and alarming, but let's say a 30-year-old American in America right now is doing no better than his or her parents. Then that's a new thing in American history that you would think over time, we want to do better than the next generation, than the last generation. It's not happening anymore.
I think it all ties into what we're talking about on campuses. For the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. That is the social compact breaking down. People aged 30 to 34, 60% of them in 1990 had one child. Now it's 27%. People are opting out of America. They're not optimistic about it. They're not having kids. Young people aren't having sex. They're not meeting. They're not mating. The pool of emotionally and economically viable men shrinks every day, which lessens household formation. So we have a real issue. Young people are enraged. So it turns every cut, every movement into an opportunistic infection because, quite frankly, they are just pissed off. They look up, they see wealth, exceptional wealth across my generation and people in certain industries, and they are really struggling. Their purchasing power is going down, and the incumbents create artificial scarcity on campus. We take pride in rejecting 90% of our applicants, so the incumbents who already have a degree see their degree go up in value. We get very concerned with housing and traffic once we own a housing. Housing permits are sequestered from young people. Housing prices have gone from $290 to $420 in the last 4 years. So a young person, a house, stocks that I don't own skyrocket in value. Let's have COVID relief and flush the markets and take assets way up, because if 1 million people dying would be bad, would be tragic if I got less wealthy. And we're doing it on their credit card. Young people have every reason to be enraged, and every issue they see, they look up, they get angry, and they see someone doing better than them. And then every day it is speedballed in their face that they are failing, that they are not doing as well as everyone around them. We have lost the script. Our kids are more anxious and more depressed and more obese and more addicted. And we have made a purposeful decision to let this happen by ensuring that people around this table stay wealthy at the cost of young people.
Well, I would not say that young people are not having sex. I mean, it kind of seems like a cesspool out there to me. The hopeflation index is hitting all-time highs, so I think he is conflating having sex and having babies here, okay? That is true. The young people are not having babies. Household formation is down. Fertility rates are down, meaning that women who are in the age between 15 and 44 are having less and less babies. And in addition to that, we see more and more married couples deciding not to have babies, and Scott is basically using these trends to draw a conclusion that people are opting out of America, meaning they're not optimistic about their future and perhaps don't feel stable enough to be able to have a family. Listen to the stat. The median age of a first-time home buyer in the United States has gone up from 28 years of old in 1991 to 40 years old right now. So if people can't even afford to own a home, obviously they're not thinking about babies. So Scott later arrives to the main point of his, which is that young people are basically the scapegoats and essentially are eating glass, while people who own assets are enjoying this unprecedented growth in their wealth, which is absolutely true, by the way. If this was a musical chair game, the music has stopped and young people are the ones having that do not have a seat to sit on. Young Americans owe around 1.8 trillion in student debt. Not only that, the growth of this debt has been quite staggering, to say the least. The average student graduates with a bachelor's degree having roughly $32K in student debt. The median salary for a college graduate is roughly $60K. So have in mind that this number, by the way, is have not changed for 3 decades. So 30 years ago, someone who graduated with a bachelor's degree also was receiving $60K. Now, these numbers are inflation adjusted to reflect current dollars, meaning they are showing that someone in the 90s was getting a pay package equivalent to $60,000 today, okay? But this is using official inflation numbers, which obviously are not worth the electronic bits and the compute power to even show up on your screen. Anyone with a combination of eyes and brain knows that inflation numbers are artificially suppressed and do not reflect the reality. So young people earn less in terms of purchasing power, carry significantly more student debt. The only house they can afford is a paper house or an NFT house in some universe or something, you know? I was curious and did some calculation. It appears that a person earning gross income of $60K a year with no credit card debt, no student loan debt, no car debt, which obviously is not real, but let's just assume that for example's sake, okay? That person can afford to buy a house roughly valued at $245,000. The average house price in the United States is a little over 500K, and the median home price in the United States is a little over 400K. So naturally, young people cannot afford to own homes. And the reality is that housing plays a huge role in wealth creation for every generation. Housing may not be the best investment given, property maintenance, taxes, insurance, all these payments, but housing is by far the best savings vehicle of all time because people need a house to live, so they prioritize paying mortgage over other expenses, which in turn builds up their equity in the house and accumulates wealth. So this hidden savings mechanism is what enabled previous generations to accumulate wealth and essentially gain financial freedom. So housing is a consumable, but it's also an asset that appreciates over time. So when you take away the ability to own homes from young Americans, you're essentially crippling their ability to save and build any meaningful wealth over time.
Why is it that so many of these young people that you're talking about seem to head into life after going to 4-year schools or 2-year schools or whatever, head into life with a lack of financial literacy? They don't know anything about money or the growth of money. All they know is the absence of money.
I think we need to have in our curriculums in high school a class on adulting. My kid, I see it in my house, my kid can do integers and basic calculus, but he doesn't understand the interest on his credit card. So there's just some basic kind of financial literacy that we're not teaching. And when you start replacing civics with computer science, you lose a sense of the country and you start learning about programming. And when you don't talk about basic financial literacy or even mating, I would like to see in the senior year of college mating dynamics and help men understand and women what is unique to them and their vulnerabilities to social media. I was talking about the challenges of men from social media. At exactly the wrong time in a young girl's life, she is presented with a valuation where she never gets to leave the high school cafeteria 24/7. And as my colleague Jonathan Haidt has pointed out, we've seen a dramatic uptick in suicide. But I think effectively we just don't have basic skills for young people. We're teaching them advanced things, but we're not teaching them the basics around what a mortgage is, what interest rates mean. So I think we could use just a basic class on adulting, junior or senior year.
Now, at the very end, Scott is asked about financial literacy. I mean, I'm just going to be brutally honest with you guys. I am tired of these people suggesting that some person at the school giving you boring lectures on credit cards is going to somehow magically improve people's financial situations. Listen, a person who only qualifies for 14% car loan takes it because there is nothing else to do. They need a car. They're already drowning in student debt. Their income is low. Rent is high, which forces them to use credit cards. And all that creates this vicious cycle where they may not have enough for a big enough down payment, and their debt amount on their credit report is rated poor. And lo and behold, you have a situation where the only loan they qualify is this 20% car loan. And what are they going to do? Say no and just jog to work every day? Everyone just always assumes that a person who's using credit cards is financially retarded. Well, some people do not have any other options because they were promised this high-paying career only if they went to school and paid enormous amount of money for it and got into this debt. And now they find themselves in the situation where they the ROI is negative and their degree is not generating enough earnings to justify the cost of it. And the most hilarious part is that they're saying that the institutions that created the problem in the first place should be the ones to teach you about financial literacy. Let me tell you this, guys. If colleges were to teach financial literacy and they were honest, they literally should do every student a favor and during the first semester show the math of how their college degree is going to raw dog them for the rest of their lives. That is it. That should be the only class allowed in the school, and then you graduate with a bachelor's and understanding that your $200,000 art history degree doesn't even qualify you to say, "Welcome to McDonald's. Can I start with your order, please?" You know, you don't even qualify for that. Honestly, I should just open my own school and save people hundreds of thousands of dollars just for, I don't know, maybe $14.99. That would literally solve this financial literacy problem for everyone. I don't even understand how these universities justify their costs, given that YouTube is significantly more valuable than 90% of these schools, and we still and we sit here on national TV and wonder why young Americans are suffering. Well, I have a thought that maybe the $200,000 debt at the age of 23 is weighing them down. I don't know. Just a thought. Maybe this is a piece of paper should not be costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just maybe these loans should not be given out by the government at these artificially suppressed interest rates. Because let me tell you this, if you allow any person in the private sector with half functioning brain to price these loans, no one, and I mean no one, would price these puppetry art degrees at these low rates. I mean, we have journalism degrees. Are you kidding me? Trust me when I say that you do not need to spend 4 years in college and pay a couple $100,000 for the privilege to post some thoughts on social media. Okay? Anyways, as you guys can see, I get very passionate about certain subjects, so I guess I'll just wrap it up here, okay?